Hello, everybody. Welcome to Buckeye Weekly for our post-game instant reaction. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr, and our instant reaction to one heck of a beatdown by the Buckeyes over Michigan, 62-39. A little bit different than our score predictions. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody could be, you can't be upset with us for not getting this right. I was talking to somebody down on the field, like when it was like 55 or whatever. And I said, if you put this score prediction in your staff picks or whatever, you'd be fired.
Yes.
You can't go, I think Ohio State 62-39. I'm feeling frisky. There's no frisky. There's no way you could have the feeling that this was going to happen.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to our Friday show, you'll hear us talk about a lot of the stuff that you just saw happen. Like, if they were going to win, this is what was going to happen. They were going to have to be able to stop the run. They were going to have to be able to run the ball. They were going to have to be able to pass protect better than they had. They were going to have to play better defense than they had. They were going to have to, we talked in the pregame, you score a touchdown on defense, you score a touchdown on special teams, you pretty much always win the game.
Yep.
We, I think, thought, well, if they do like one or two of those things, they've got a chance. They did all of those things, and Michigan did none of those things.
Well, Ohio State came into the game like 3-0 when they've thrown for 300 yards against Michigan. 3-0 in the last 25 years when scoring a special teams touchdown. They did both of those. Whatever an O when averaging more yards per carry, they did that, the most important stat. Well, now that may change once they review Paris Campbell's run. The 78-yarder, Paris Campbell said that was a pass. Just came from over by where the OSU Sports Information Department was huddled around a monitor trying to decide if they can actually see a pass. If they can't, I don't know that they're going to change that stat. But even without it, they still rushed. Holy cow.
Yeah, they outrushed them 6.7 to 4.0 per carry. And even if you take out the 78 yards for Paris Campbell, that knocks it down like 2 yards per carry. So they're still outrushing Michigan per carry, even if you take out the 78-yard touchdown. That is right there. That's it. I feel like I write about this every year before the game. That's a stat. You win that stat, you win the game every year. And this year, again, boom, they did it.
And they were pretty much even at the half in terms of yards per carry. But as we've seen, Ohio State wears Michigan down. The running game wins out. Mike Weber, another quiet 96 yards, almost with 100. I don't know what he had in the first half. It didn't feel like there weren't many rushing yards in the first half, maybe like 56, something like that total for Ohio State.
Yeah, not much.
And so then he wore them down, and obviously, Paris Campbell did his thing. J.K. Dobbins was quiet, but 3.8 yards per carry in this game is something that you can live with as long as you are moving the chains. I don't know how many first downs they had. Both teams had 28 first downs. So they did whatever they wanted to. And we were talking before we came up here, Michigan's offense, which we had mentioned throughout the week, played into Ohio State's hands, provided they didn't do anything like outside the hash marks. And they didn't do much outside, and Ohio State was tackling well. Then it turns out that what Michigan does on defense plays right into Ohio State's hands, and that's what Paris Campbell was saying. Man coverage, one high safety. The Johnny Dixon touchdown was as open as I've seen a receiver for the Buckeyes this year. There was nobody around him. There was another one where KJ Hill, I think, was open that Haskins actually threw to Ben Victor, who dropped it. But there are open guys all over the place, and Don Brown, God bless him, that defense was not a good matchup for this Ohio State offense.
No, they beat the mustache right off Don Brown today. That was as shocking as anything. Like, I think you could sort of see the Ohio State defense maybe matching up reasonably well with Michigan's offense. Like, that was they're similar enough to Michigan State that you could see them kind of containing the Michigan offense. For Ohio State to just light Michigan's defense on fire for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
That was the number one defense in the country. And they had no answers. We go back to the Thursday Buckeye Weekly show from last week when it was all the Michigan fans talking about what were their concerns. And a whole lot of them talked about crossing routes. And you figured Michigan was going to have to get out of that man defense because they were just going to keep getting beat on those crossing routes. And Ohio State was living on that. And you couldn't just do that all day.
Right.
But they did it enough that it really built the momentum and opened up a lot of other stuff.
With the way they pass block, you think maybe they could have done it all day. As long as Dwayne Haskins was getting time, which was every time, the couple times he was pressured, he stepped up into the pocket and avoided it. But they credit the offensive line for the win because they gave him time to throw. And, without the adjusted run from Paris Campbell, you're looking at 19 for 30, 318 yards, 5 touchdowns. The key number there, 0 sacks. And we've talked before the game, like, if they can protect him, they are going to move the ball. They're going to score. They are going to score 62 points. I can't remember which one of us said that. Like, if they can protect him, you're looking at a 60-banger.
It was both of us, because I remember we said it, and then I was like, jinx. And then you had to stop talking for the rest of the whole pregame show.
It was
don't go
probably
back
the
and
best
watch
show.
it. Don't go back and watch it. I think our signal cut out at one point. But
yeah. It's just the 59-0 in 2014 had to happen. Is this one of those games that had to happen? I mean, they still gave up 39 points, but when you throw up 62, it's almost like the 39 doesn't exist.
Right. I think that all anyone's going to see from that game was Ohio State scoring 62 points against Michigan, because all year you've been hearing about how great Michigan's defense is and how no one's scoring against Michigan. I think going into this game, I won't speak for you, but personally, I had basically written off their playoff chances. Yeah. And then down on the field towards the end of the game, we were talking to one of the national guys. I don't know. I don't want to blow up his spot, so I won't say who it is. But he was like very openly saying, like I was saying, like I don't think they'll make the playoff. He's like, oh no. If they look impressive next week, they are very much in the conversation. Like maybe could jump Oklahoma even if Oklahoma wins, kind of. Like if Oklahoma wins close and Ohio State wins big, he thought they might.
What if it's a performance like they had against Wisconsin last year, where it's like, you look good early, then you're like,
They probably need to have some style points next week. And Northwestern is the kind of team. Well, I mean, we'll talk about this a whole bunch this week. But Northwestern is the kind of team that will just kind of drag you down to their level. Yeah. Like you don't ever see people just blowing Northwestern off the field. They are capable of losing to Akron, and they're capable of playing Michigan very, very tight. But you don't ever see anyone hanging like half 100 on Northwestern. That just doesn't generally happen.
Yeah, we could talk about them later. Do we want to do some questions here?
Sure. Mike says, I think we can torch Notre Dame, but I'm not sure about the Fighting Dabos or Old St. Nick. You're not going to get Notre Dame in the playoff because Notre Dame's probably the 3 seed and Ohio State's the 4 seed if they would get in. I mean, that's. We got a whole nother game we got to watch first.
Is it too soon to talk about playoffs?
Yes, probably too soon to talk about playoffs. Treebuck says if Oklahoma wins, I can't see how OSU gets in. Yeah, I mean, I kind of lean that way, but at this point, if they want a resume rank and they want to rank most impressive wins, that's it. You just saw it. 62 points against Michigan is the most impressive win anyone has.
Best win or worst loss?
Well, it changes based on whoever they want to put in. Raquel asks, how loud is the stadium? I mean, we're in the press box, but you could feel the press box shake a few times, and that is not something we felt.
It was consistently loud because there was always something to cheer about.
Yeah.
It was nonstop action, like the week before, except I guess this is probably better action.
Yes.
Because Ohio State didn't trail the entire game and lead only in overtime. So I thought it was a good crowd. Yeah, no,
a very, very loud crowd, very enthusiastic crowd. There was a huge crowd of recruits here today, and they got quite a show. I mean, we always say, you lose a game, it doesn't necessarily keep you from, but, if you wanted to show recruits, hey, this is a big-time atmosphere, this is a big-time program, you should want to be a part of it. That's what it looks like. Chris Olave, after the game, someone asked him about going back to when he was a recruit here. He came for the 2017 Michigan State game, which is that 48-3 game the week after Iowa. He talked about the atmosphere there and how impressive that was and how much that stood out to him and how that kind of helped sway him. So, a year from now when some other random freshman is making 3 of the biggest plays of the game, which doesn't really usually happen very often. That's
you're talking about Olave. We'll talk about him real quick. Not real quick. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. The punt block, which was a great conversation that Urban had, a retelling of a story that basically working in practice on that punt block, Urban, it was Greg Schiano's play and Greg Schiano's plan, and Urban said you can't get to the ball. But whatever you're trying to devise with this plan, it's not going to get to the ball. It's not. Olave's fast, but he's not that fast.
Yeah, Urban said 2.1 seconds to get there, and he just didn't think he didn't think anyone could get there the route that he was going to go on that block.
And then, so when they called the play, they decided to go for a punt block. Urban was expecting a different play call, and when he heard the one that he didn't like, he said he got pretty angry.
Yeah.
And then, things turned out okay. So that was an interesting story. Another footnote in this series, as we mentioned, once you block a kicker, you score on a special teams touchdown, you win. But Olave also had the 2 catches for 48 yards, both touchdowns, both 24-yarders. The second one where he was on the sideline and then curled around to get around his man and catch the ball, it just shows such a feel for the game. And Paris Campbell said he's smooth and he's effortless. And he showed that. And this was a guy who was the 3rd lowest ranked recruit in the nation. Didn't have a junior season, which is why. But ever since he's been on campus, he's been outstanding. And it took an injury to Austin Mack for us to really get to see him.
Yeah, and I asked him, when did it kind of click for you this year? And he said after that Austin Mack injury against Purdue, he knew he was going to have to kind of step up, and he wasn't going to be able to sort of sit down the depth chart and watch. He was going to have to step up and be an impact guy. And he had some big catches against Michigan State, and that was when you knew, hey, this is they trust this guy because they're throwing him in a big spot on the road against a good ranked opponent, and for them to trust him at that point was pretty telling. And then for him to have been out there in the first half, and he at one point said after the game, he went up to Terry McLaurin and said, do you want my reps? He was trying to defer to the older guy, and Terry McLaurin was like, no, you got this, you got it, and he did. That was the question scrolled down a little bit, but Raquel asked, I think it was Raquel, was this the most impressive performance from a true freshman in Ohio State Michigan history? Claret had stingers in that 2002 game, but he had a couple big plays. He had a touchdown rushing. He had that big wheel route down the sidelines.
Didn't he also rush for 100 yards in that game?
He might have. That's the one that just jumps to mind immediately for me. But
Beanie had the touchdown run in 2006, but he only had 55 yards rushing on the 5 carries, and one of those was a 52-yarder.
It's up there. If you're in this conversation, you're already doing pretty well.
It wasn't Andy Katzenmoyer.
No, that one didn't go well. Question, Treebuck, the 3 points right before half sure helped with the preceding disastrous couple minutes. That might be, of all the things today, that might be the most impressive, that they had that just weapons grade stupidity before halftime. Pass interference call, touchdown. Ensuing kickoff, fumble it. Next play, touchdown. 2 touchdowns in 6 seconds. This is a team that has not necessarily responded well to adversity this year. And that was if they're looking to fold, you turn a 21-6 lead into a 21-19 in 6 seconds. That's an invitation to lose 42-24 or something. And they didn't do that. They came, like Treebuck said, you go right down the field, you kick a field goal right at the end of the half you get more points on the board. I don't have any idea why they didn't review that Ben Victor catch, because it sure looked like it was at least worth taking a look at. But
we could talk about the refs too.
We could. We could.
Go ahead.
Matt says a few people have been commenting on our picks, pregame picks. Matt says, "I'd love it when you two pick them wrong." So did the game day crew, so you weren't that far off. Yeah, everyone on game day picked Michigan. So
don't blame us.
Yeah,
Corso did it too. Get on that guy.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't wear a helmet. That was
we would never.
No. Is this sustainable? Will we see this version of OSU next week?
Yeah.
Sure, maybe.
Yeah,
absolutely, unless you don't.
Yeah, I think Northwestern is more spread them out than Michigan. So. Good luck with that. Yeah,
it's a difficult matchup in some ways. The personnel isn't nearly as good for Northwestern as it is for Michigan, but schematically they might be a better matchup. So, yeah, I would think I mean, I have not watched a ton of Northwestern. We have to do a little cramming now, but from the little bit I've seen of Northwestern, I think they score 20 or 24 points next week. And Ohio State, if an Ohio State can score 35 or 42, then sure, then you've got a nice little W and a decent case for the playoff.
Yeah, but, I mean, a week ago, Ohio State gave up 51 points to Maryland. So a week from now, the very same thing could happen to Northwestern.
Was that in basketball? I don't remember that.
It was football, and we were there.
Were we? Keji, even without a Texas win, can Ohio State jump Oklahoma, have a worse loss but better wins? And I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Sure, they could. I mean, we talked about this a little earlier. My assumption until I see them on one of those top 4 graphics next Sunday, my assumption is no, they're going to the Rose Bowl, and that's assuming they win next week, that you're going to the Rose Bowl, and that's at that point. If they win the Big Ten and they go to the Rose Bowl, that's a great season. Yeah. You do what you just did in Michigan.
Exactly.
That is a great season.
It's already a successful season.
Yeah, I mean, this is already, after today, even if they lose to Northwestern and lose in the bowl game, it's still a good season. You have a chance to make it a great season and potentially, spectacular if they get into the playoff and do something. But that was pretty...
I wonder if Michigan will drop a bit like a rock now, because they saw how they look pretty slow. Mm-hmm. And I think that you'll see... Maybe they'll come to the realization or the rationalization that Michigan isn't as good as they thought. That way they can keep Ohio State, below Oklahoma and continue to just keep Ohio State just low enough so that they aren't in the conversation. But now they have to be in the conversation. So now they have to make the things that they talk about, make them look a little worse, muddy them up a little bit,
Yeah, I mean,
that's why LSU stays high. That helps Alabama. That helps Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Mississippi State staying high last year for no reason.
Right,
They lost to Ole Miss. And
I don't think Ohio State has anything like that, unless Michigan's 6 and Ohio State's 5, which I would totally not expect.
If Michigan State can hang on and pull off this big win over Rutgers, they could finish 7-5. Maybe they get back in the top 25.
Oh man!
I mean, you can almost tell what the committee wants to do by where they rank teams like Michigan State and Penn State, and are they trying to build a case for Ohio State, or are they trying to build a case for Oklahoma, or
if they're trying to build a case for Ohio State, they have not yet gotten the permits. They haven't bought any materials. There is no building going on. They haven't even graded the land. There's nothing. There's still trees there. There's no building going on.
Next one, finally a complete game. The defense played well, although we need to cut out the penalties, especially the pass interference calls.
Oh, man.
The offensive line gave Haskins time and our running backs holes to run through. It's a great day to be a Buckeye. That is from
the pass interference stuff. You think about it. If they don't interfere and they don't have that 13-point thing, not that Ohio State would have gone and scored 62 at this point, because Urban said they had to score so much because Michigan was scoring. But this would have been just a massive blowout. If you don't allow Michigan to extend drives with the pass interferences, which is at this point, I think it's part of Ohio State's defense. It's part of their strategy to not get beat deep. But if you eliminate some of those and that 13 points, and the Harbaugh going for 2 there, it was. I think they had the momentum. He wanted to make it a psychological thing where, you guys were up 21-6. Now it's 21-21. It's a whole new ball game. Now you're going to be, crapping your pants at halftime. And it didn't happen. Ohio State gets a field goal, turns into a 5-point game. And then Ohio State punts on their first drive in the second half. Then it's 5 straight touchdowns. And like you said, they came out and there was no concern. There were no worries. It was just domination, and they took over the game. They beat Michigan up, and Michigan fought, but they just couldn't score with Ohio State.
And on the other side of the ball, what's interesting is, you talked about the penalties on defense. On offense, there were a couple penalties that were real shaky, that were 15-yard personal fouls on 3rd and 1s that turned 3rd and 1 into 3rd and 16. One of them was on Urban Meyer yelling about what should have. If that wasn't targeting, no one knows what targeting was, but that was targeting.
Yeah,
and he didn't get called, and Urban Meyer gets flagged for that. And Chase Winovich pushes Malcolm Pridgeon in the back, and Malcolm Pridgeon bumps into a Michigan player, and Malcolm Pridgeon gets flagged for it. Those were just abominably bad calls.
And then that turns into a 3rd and 16 instead of a a second and a 3rd and 1.
Yeah. Thomas says, really, you guys should admit to a serving of crow. I mean,
I admit Tom should eat crow. He had Ohio State losing 27-20.
Yeah, I mean, and in fairness, those are numbers. So
whereas I had Ohio State scoring 27 points. So
20, you had Ohio State losing 27 to purple. So I mean, it was close. Kyle says, how does number 28 have a scholarship to play Power 5 football? That is Brandon Watson from Michigan.
And he was in Michigan's cornerback rotation all year long. They rotate 3 corners. And he's played well this year. But he was exposed today, and a lot of Michigan defense was exposed. And that man coverage, and they just everything that happened was seemingly against him. We never saw Lavert Hill. Never really noticed him.
No, he
may have been on Terry McLaurin quite a bit.
Because you didn't hear much of Terry McLaurin. Yeah. David Long, when he went out, I mean that's one of Michigan's very good corners. When he went out, it was like, oh, that's a big deal. And then for Devin Bush to go out 3 plays after that, it was like, oh, that was I feel like the time when Michigan was kind of like, oh, okay, we're just going to get murdered today. Okay, now we're on the same page. Okay,
how many times do you think Ohio State has only punted 3 times against Michigan?
Maybe 2006. Maybe. I mean, maybe one of those Rich Rod years where it was 42 to 7.
That's true.
I mean, but not many, because you have to think about games where they're just scoring and scoring and scoring and scoring. And they did. We talked about them having to go for it, not being punting in plus territory. I don't believe they punted in plus territory all day today. It was they did all the stuff that we said, well, if they do this and they do this and they do this.
That was our Friday show.
Yeah. If they can do these 17 things, if they can do 5 of them, they have a chance. If they can do 10 of them, they have a good chance. They did all 17 of them. And
go back and listen to the Friday show.
Yeah, ignore
It'll
Monday
be
through,
a pregame.
Yeah, ignore Monday through Wednesday last week.
And ignore the pregame show today.
Yeah, exactly.
Just treat the Friday show like the Saturday show, and you'll be like, these guys were spot on. They nailed this thing.
Yeah, Mike says, I hear Don Brown is so great every year that Ohio State always hangs at least 30 on him. I mean,
Michigan fans were very upset with Don Brown.
Yeah.
And they were, I was just reading some of the message board, where they're like, he's great against Rutgers and he sucks against Ohio State. And I don't want to say he sucks against Ohio State because Ohio State has a lot of talent and good coaches. But what they do is not good for what Ohio State does, just as, I guess, what Purdue does. Is not good for what Ohio State does defensively.
Yes.
In your opinion, in my opinion,
in the box scorer's opinion.
Well, that's just paper.
Kyle asks, is Demetrius Knox done for the year? We did not get an answer on that. It didn't look good, but
it did not.
I didn't see. I couldn't tell whether that was a knee or a broken ankle or what. They were looking at legs, but I couldn't.
Right.
I didn't have a great angle on it. We were down on the field at that point.
The way he looked,
he didn't. He rode off the cart. In just his body language just sort of suggested yep, that's it for my career.
Right.
But yeah,
if you're going to go out though,
if you are going to go out,
you don't want to do it, but
if you can go out with 62 points against Michigan, that's not a bad way to go. And this is an opportunity now for another of the young guys to step up. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the opportunity for Brendan White opening up after the Jordan Fuller targeting call. The opportunity for Chris Olave opening up after the Austin Mack injury. Now Urban has said several times Wyatt Davis is the next man up in that rotation. So I assume that's Wyatt Davis. I mean, you theoretically could move Brandon Bowen inside and play him there, but whether it's Bowen or Wyatt Davis, that's an opportunity to have a guy who's going to be there next year now get a bunch of reps with the ones. If Knox is out, and again, we don't know. That didn't get addressed during postgame.
No.
We'll talk to Urban about that on Monday.
If he is out, then Davis gets a ton of reps. Now, bowl practice.
Yep.
Where at that point, he would almost be like a returning starter.
Yeah.
Getting so many first-team reps, which would give them a head start then for next year.
Yeah, and all of a sudden the offensive line for next year, if you've got Thayer Munford at left tackle. You've got Wyatt Davis at guard. I mean, I assume they slide Jordan over to left guard and put Myers in at center, Josh Myers in at center, and then Bowen, I guess, at right tackle. I mean, we probably don't need to do a real in-depth breakdown of the depth chart. We will have roughly 9 months to do that. Yeah. Matt asks, how does Michigan hold on to any of the recruits after this beatdown? I think that
They scored 39 points.
They did score 39 points. There's that. Got a lot of fresh air and exercise today, so that was good. One game does not necessarily...
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
You hear that all the time. I mean, Urban had a huge recruiting weekend for the 2014 Virginia Tech game and ended up getting a bunch of those guys. I don't remember exactly who it was, but there were a bunch of guys who visited for that game who ended up coming. Was that like Paris Campbell and those guys?
No, he would... Well, 2014. No, because he was a true freshman in 2014. Okay. That would have been the 2015 class that he didn't really like.
Okay.
So
maybe
when you sign a bunch of guys who witness a loss in person, maybe you're like, yeah, if you guys still really want to be here, I don't know that I want you. Mm-hmm. Like, you should want to go somewhere where you can be great instead of whatever this was.
But if the Zach Harrison recruitment turns out with him going up to Michigan, that looks a lot different than it does if Michigan had won here. If Michigan wins here and then they land Zach Harrison, that sets the whole narrative up of, Ohio State has lost control of the rivalry. Now it's, well, you just had the number one defensive end in the country for 3 years and you just got your ass blasted. Yep. So now you've got another one. Congratulations, it's a lateral move.
Exactly.
I mean, the narrative, and it's
maybe this
silly.
time you can do something with it.
It's silly because one thing has very little to do with the other, but that's the way the world works. So
the transitive property in college football knows no bounds.
Yes. So I mean, the good news is you can own fools on Twitter for the next year, no matter what. So you've got that going for you. Scrolling past a couple we've already answered. Eric says Urban's emotion, was this his last win in the shoe? I mean, he didn't address it. He was very emotional after the game. But he's always kind of emotional after Michigan wins.
He had to hold back tears, but that was because he was asked about his wife.
I mean, I think everyone has their speculation on what everything means, but nothing.
And whatever your thought is, you're going to read into everything to sort of confirm your...
Sure, yeah, everything proves that whatever you're thinking is correct.
Always.
Unless you thought Michigan was going to win. But I don't know anyone who thought that.
I do not know, not in this room.
Michael O'Loughlin says, Haskins is a real Heisman threat now. Do we see the same level of execution on both sides in Indy? I mean, I don't want to go to New York in 2 weeks. I don't. The Heisman's kind of garbage, so whatever.
It's Tua and it's Kyler. And right now it seems like Kyler has moved ahead, well, at least in my mind, but I'm sure not in many of the voters' minds because he's Tua and he's playing for Alabama. But they've not been, he's not been like Kyler Murray's like putting up crazy numbers.
Right.
Haskins has just kind of been on the fringe ever since the Purdue game, I'm guessing. Even though he throws for 470 yards, and they're like, well, we're not so fond of him, even though he just continues to produce. And I'd like to see other quarterbacks do this against Michigan, and maybe they can, but I'd still like to see it. Prove it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Alabama versus Michigan would have looked like if they had made the playoff, but I mean...
It might have looked like this, except for there wouldn't be 39 points.
Not as many points from Michigan. I coming into this game, I thought if Michigan won out and won the Big Ten championship, that was going to be some real fool's gold. Alabama was just going to light them up, and I didn't see anything today that would change my mind on that at all.
Especially if Devin Bush is still hurt.
Yeah, no, Devin Bush and David Long. If you're playing without them, it gets real ugly. He has about the same level of execution on both sides in Indy. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Urban Meyer teams, when everyone thinks they're terrible, everyone talks about how they're awful and going to lose, you get a game like that.
Yep.
And then when you have people talking about how great they are, they look terrible and
rat poison.
Yeah, it's the old Nick Saban rat poison. It's I don't think you're going to see them. I don't anticipate they're going to lose next week, but it wouldn't surprise me if they came out and it was 21-17 or something, and it was like, they won, but it was pretty unimpressive. And then and then it's last year. You win the Big Ten. You go to, in this case, the Rose Bowl instead of the Cotton Bowl, and if they win 21-17 next week, that's great. That's an awesome season. You go to the Rose Bowl, and that's an awesome way for this group of seniors to go out.
Big Ten champs. That was the first goal, and then what Urban says is, as long as you win the Big Ten, then that opens up other doors. And if that door happens to be the Rose Bowl, attack it with intensity unknown to mankind. What is it?
I don't know. 62 points unknown to mankind. in case you guys did not see this was reported one way, and it's not quite right. 62 points is the most that Michigan has ever given up in regulation. They gave up 65 to Illinois in like a triple overtime game in 2010. 62 points, the most. They've been playing football since 1870 something, 18 whatever it is, and they have never given up that many points in regulation. And Urban could have hit 70 or 69 if he had not gone for two. I mean, you go for one there, and it's kind of the classy, nice thing to do. But you go for two, and you get to 70, and it's
right.
I mean, either one. That was tantalizingly close.
What if, like, he goes for two, gets it or doesn't get it, and he gets asked, why did you go for two? And he's like, because I'm not nice. I'm not a nice guy.
I'm not a nice guy. Or if he had said he couldn't go for three, then I finally would have had a definitive answer on an Ohio State coach. That would have been exciting. Tony, where has that D been all year?
They gave him 39 points.
Yeah, I mean,
the tackling was much better.
Yeah. It was. The tackling was much better. The linebackers looked like Ohio State linebackers.
Tough Borland had 10 tackles. Malik Harrison had 7 and 2 tackles for loss. He called it the best game of his career. I'm not going to argue with him.
Yeah.
Pete Werner, they attacked him like once when he was in coverage with Chris Evans on a slant.
Yep.
But other than that, they didn't spread him out and attack him, and they were beyond serviceable. They were very good. What was Michigan's total yardage?
Michigan's total yardage was
about 401 yards. So, I mean, that's right around their average, isn't it?
It's somewhere around there. And it was 4.0 yards per rush, 6.3 yards per passing attempt. Those are like very average numbers. Yeah. That was a high possession game because the ball Ohio State kept scoring so quickly that they got a ton of possessions. But as on a points per or a yards per play basis, that's really not bad at all.
Throw like another 60 yards and like 4 pass interference penalties to help move the ball as well.
12 penalties, 150 yards on Ohio State. That's a lot. I mean, if you're playing I'm going to say something that would have sounded ludicrous 6 hours ago. When you're playing a better team than Michigan, you're going to need to button that up a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, if they don't make the playoff, I don't know that they play a team better than Michigan this year. If it's Northwestern, if they play Northwestern next week and then Utah in the Rose Bowl, those are two teams.
Is that what it is now?
Well, it's either Utah or Washington. So if it's Northwestern and Utah, like that's gonna be the last fun game you see because both of those teams just drag you down. It's like a sea monster pulling a boat under the water.
Yeah, they could play on turf like this, and you still like end up muddy. You're like, where does the mud come from? We're playing on a rubber field.
Matt says the Buckeyes just scored again behind you. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Kyle says he doesn't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. You should write a song about that, Kyle. Treebuck says, was the last TD pass one for the committee? I mean, it could be style points for the committee. It could be style points for the recruits in the building. It could be style points for it's Michigan, and you just like to drag them a little bit.
But at that point, it was what? It was still a 2-touchdown game.
Yep.
So you get that third score because we saw at the end of the first half how quickly Michigan was able to score 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So you can't really call it running up the score or whatever because they needed that one just to get clearance.
They were up 23 points at that point, so it was a little.
Whatever. I'm not a math major.
It was a little style pointsy. Mike says, "Why can Benjamin Victor catch tough passes and not catch easy open passes?" I mean, I'm remembering one drop that he had kind of down the sidelines. I don't remember.
That was it.
Yeah.
55-32. Oh, it was like because they scored a touchdown. I wanted to correct you because I felt like you're calling me stupid.
Well, I'm reading a stat packet, so it's not like I'm remembering this. It's just
I should try that.
Was it for Heisman voters? Matt says. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't think Urban's thinking about that stuff.
No, I think Urban's thinking about win the game, get to next week, beat Northwestern. And then
plus they don't run the ball very well down there, so
you
do what you can to score.
Mike says, should Harbaugh get fired? They're not going to fire him, but if you wanted to see what a game looks like that was like, no, maybe I'm going to go back to the NFL because this isn't fun anymore, like, would that floor you if he was it was like, nope, that's it, we're done?
No. But I also think that this is going to kill him.
Yes.
And so you try one more time at home next year.
Yeah, and next year is a year when Ohio State's losing some talent, and that may be a little bit of a rebuilding year, especially if it's Martell and not Haskins.
And this may have been Dwayne Haskins, the game that pushes him to the NFL.
Yeah, and that's and we'll see. I think next year you've got some that Cincinnati game's a little dangerous next year at home, but we'll worry about that. We have years and years to go. Andy says yes. Talk about the refs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will get fined by the Big Ten.
Even if they don't want to call targeting on the slide, he gave himself up and still got hit.
Yes.
Dwayne Haskins. So there should have been something there, and that's what set Urban off.
Yeah.
And
that was egregious enough that there was a pass interference penalty right after that that seemed a little bit like a makeup call. Like it was like that was a real bad call.
At that point it was like 3rd and 16 or whatever.
Yeah, it was 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 16. It really should have been 15 yards for some kind of a personal foul. Kent says, where did the offensive line get that protection from? Haskins had 3 to 5 seconds to scan the field every snap. I mean, you asked him. Yeah, you asked him about that post game. You had a great line. The reporters were all sitting back in kind of like a horseshoe shape around him, like 4 or 5 yards back from where he was. And you said, I mean, all day the pocket looked like that. Just no one within 5 yards of him.
And he was they picked up all of the blitzes. You give him that much time, you'll beat anybody. You should. Especially when they're playing man coverage and you're doing they'd have double moves. There was enough time pass blocking to have double moves down the field, which you wouldn't expect. But I'm thinking they're seeing how effective they are pass blocking, and Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson are like, what we ought to do? Let's throw some double moves on these guys and go downfield.
Yeah.
And there's Johnny Dixon all by himself. Like he had, if you put the field in quadrants, he was in a quadrant all by himself. And the defense, I guess, is so concerned about the stuff over the middle because that's what they're getting beat on. And there were plays to be made all over the field. And today, they made about 95% of them.
Yeah. JF Chenger says, what do we need to know about Northwestern? We'll get to that. I mean, we're already talking about 2019. Let's not, the Northwestern game.
Let's talk, what about when Jack Miller gets here in 2020, quarterback? What are you thinking then?
He was here today. He was one of the recruits here. I mean, he had to like what he saw, and whether that's an Urban Meyer team in 2020 or a Ryan Day team or whoever it is.
Don Brown.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Don Brown is not going to be Ohio State's
next
head coach.
Well, you don't know how he interviews,
but maybe that's true. Raquel says 2 weeks in a row for good offensive performance. Yep, that's a fact. JF Chenger lost in the shuffle the amazing amount of penalties. How do you move forward with that?
This is who they are.
Yeah.
I don't see the corners not getting rid of the pass interfering because they're an aggressive group. And like the Shaun Wade interference, you're like, why? You just you stood in front of a guy.
Right.
What are you expecting to happen?
Yeah. Mike says he doesn't see Ohio State making the playoff. One past few weeks, the committee made a clear statement by keeping him at number 10. I mean, UCF just lost its quarterback. If you have a couple teams ahead of them lose, I mean, if you really want Ohio State to make the playoff, real hard for USC on Saturday night.
You weren't already.
I don't think that's going to happen. USC looks pretty quitty, but if they happen to pull off that upset,
if they're trying to play for the future of their coach, which I don't know that they can anymore, but they've done it before, and were able to come up with a win.
And if Notre Dame does become a one-loss team, their best win looks a lot less good now than it did before.
Ohio State, Ohio State did better against Michigan than Notre Dame did, clearly.
Treebox says Reese Claret had 119 yards rushing in 2002. So, that's certainly up there. Jason Alge says, I want to hear it, say it. I don't know what we're supposed to say. What are we supposed to say?
I want to hear it.
I don't know.
I should probably know that.
Is it 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions, on a sesame seed bun? Because if it is, I can say it. Urban Meyer overall record 185 and 32. He could reach 200 career wins after next season. That would be 15 wins by next season would be quite a run. But I mean, you get 2 more this year, maybe 3 if you really go crazy. Mike says let's get to the Rose Bowl and start Washington or Utah. That certainly seems like the most likely. LT Ironman Trend thinks the committee wants OSU. I mean, they didn't until now, but That's certainly a team that brings eyeballs and brings fans and brings interest.
At this point, they may end up being the least of the evils.
Yeah.
With all of these, misfits that are left over, then they'll pick. Think of it that Ohio State and whoever else, they're going to be at a garage sale, and they're all on the same table, and one of them has to catch your eye, and then maybe you still bargain a little bit.
Yeah. Ryan says Revenge Tour has been canceled. But next year's Revenge Tour, though. It's going to be shorter, but man, is it going to be revengey. Yeah, I saw a Michigan staffer wheeling a cart or something off the field at the end of the game in a Revenge Tour hat. It was like, oh, that's so sad.
I hope Chase Winovich got some money for that. The coining the term and doing all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it's like the Josh Adams 33 trucking hats that Notre Dame was selling last year. Yeah. Shannon says, what's more overrated, Michigan's defense or the SEC? This is why we don't let Shannon on the podcast anymore. I'm kidding. We love you, Shannon. LT Ironman Tran says, when will the Ozone be live pregame Big Ten championship game? Yeah, we'll do believe it or not, we haven't actually planned out the logistics for next weekend yet. We weren't necessarily assuming that we were going to be in Indianapolis.
Here's the thing that changes a lot of things. This is the first year we're doing. Is this the first year we're doing this? No, this is the second year. After the game.
We've done it. We did it last year.
Yeah, we did it last year too. Okay, because we're just gonna go over and back that week, so it's gonna be a late night. But you people still deserve a post-game show.
Unless you guys want to buy us a hotel in Indy. If you want to do that, we'll do an extra long one. They're only you know what?
Yeah,
I have a feeling a whole lot of rooms just freed up. A whole lot of Michigan fans just canceled their reservations.
We should look into that. That's
true.
And
you know what? Maybe we can win that contest from that Michigan radio station for tickets to the Big Ten championship game.
It reminds me of the '95 game, leaving Michigan, leaving Ann Arbor when the cop is out, the crosswalk and saying, roses at a discount, who wants their roses, and being taunted. I don't know, I may have mentioned this on the summer show where two kids 8 and 10 years old flipped us off, and the parents are so proud of them. You show those Ohio State students.
Those Michigan fans are now 30 years old, and they've only seen 3 more wins since then.
Holy cow, those poor deserved people.
Brad says,
karma, you people.
Brad says, had we not had the DPI in our net, which led to 13 points, this is at the end of the first half, it would have been even worse for Michigan. Yeah, without that 13 points, this is over real early. And if they do have some of those injuries and do kind of quit at the end, then it could end up a 50-something to 17 kind of game. Yeah. Jonathan says he doesn't like to talk a lot before Michigan games, so he didn't, but this beatdown was not surprising to him at all. I may have edited Jonathan's comment just a little bit about exactly what Jonathan was talking or not talking before the game. Defense won't exist in the playoffs. We'll be okay if we get in because physically we can hang. Oklahoma would not hang. I don't know.
You know what's interesting is Oklahoma never really hangs in the playoffs. They get run on. But I don't know that their reputation carries on each year negatively Ohio State's does.
But they last year they played Georgia in the Rose Bowl and they didn't get 31-0.
No,
that was I don't remember what it was, 52-48 or something. It was like a 50 or 52-45. It was an entertaining, high-scoring game. It was a Big 12 game, but it wasn't 31-0. You can't get 31-0. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that hangs with you. Losing to a good Georgia team by a touchdown is it happens. Tony says it's been a rough season. Emotions came to the surface.
Just now?
Just moments ago, yes. We talked about this on the field a little bit in the fourth quarter. It was all of a sudden, this is a good season. This is a season that everyone's going to remember fondly because this is the year that they just lit Michigan on fire.
That's one that you put it in a scrapbook. You've got all of these pictures and you calligraphy even. This is one that you keep in the memory banks, and that's why 2004 was a good season. That's why 2001 was a good season. Except this is actually a good season, and then you have the Michigan win on top of it. And I can say on top of it because whatever happens after this, I don't know that it's going to top this.
Yeah, I think this goes down like the 2015 season a little bit, where it was kind of a very frustrating year all year, and then you have that one bad loss to Michigan State, and it's what a lost season. And then they just absolutely beat the brakes off of Michigan, and all of a sudden it's That's the year they beat Michigan by 29 points. Like this, and this will just always be the year that they hung 62 points on Michigan. That's 50 years from now. You will say 2018. You'll say that's the year they hung 62 points on Michigan. Shannon says, does Jim Harbaugh take the Cleveland Browns job now? I don't know. Is that open? They fired Hugh Jackson, right? Do they?
Right. It may be open if they don't keep Greg Williams, but I don't know that he is what they're looking for. I think only Michigan is what people like. Only Michigan is looking for what he is providing at this point. But he might look for the NFL. But like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he wants one last crack, or at least another crack at Ohio State and in Ann Arbor.
Yep. Brian C. says loudest he's heard the shoe since the USC game. I mean, the 2009 USC game was pretty loud.
Yeah.
I think we've had a couple loud ones since then, but it was pretty loud.
Last year's
today.
Penn State game, Johnny Dixon scoring, Marcus Ball scoring.
Yeah, the end of last year's Penn State game was pretty loud. Raquel says she attributes the 39 points to OSU offense scoring so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's part
There's
of that.
a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Jason says yards are going to add up against your defense when you have one-play drives. Yep, that's true too.
They had Michigan had 74 plays. No, it was 78 plays on offense.
Yeah, I mean that's
compared to 67 for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean 78 plays on offense.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Especially for Michigan.
Yeah, because they are not a tempo team really.
That's an extra drive or two for them.
Mike's asked, why doesn't Tate Martell throw the ball? I mean, I was extremely off-brand. Yeah, I was extremely off-brand today in the press box, wondering why the heck they had Tate Martell in for 3 plays in a row. Like, you can't be that predictable. And there was one where I think he just made the wrong read and handed it off, and he could have walked into the end zone.
You wonder if those they have to be reads, or else why put him in there? But
right.
Yeah, he wasn't reading the plays correctly, and
you can't. If you want to play him, you've got to show something else. It seemed like you're setting up like, oh, this is going to be the game where they finally, he throws the jump pass or whatever.
Well, and maybe they were going to do that today. They just never got around to it because they were scoring from further out than the 3.
Yep. Ryan says, where was this all year? Yep, we've covered this. The answer,
well, what Urban was asked that question in the postgame. He's like, well, we had 688 yards last week.
Yeah, and Maryland had 685. So, I mean,
we won, didn't we?
Yeah. the week after that went a lot better this time than it did the original time. Matt says, how does Ed Warner feel now? Not great, Bob.
Not great.
We've got to be running out of questions. You can't possibly have many more questions, can you? My goodness, you guys. What did Chase have to say after the game? We did not talk to Chase Young. We did not talk to Jonathan Cooper after the game. We got to talk to Draymond Jones. He was, nothing completely crazy out of him.
Paris Campbell did say that they were kind of annoyed at how confident and cocky the Michigan players were leading up to the game, and then probably also during the game, at least in the first quarter.
Yeah.
You can only stay cocky for so long.
Right. Harry says, so is Haskins coming back next year? I mean, gun to my head right now, I'd say no, but,
that's where I am.
My answer would have changed maybe slightly in the last 6 hours or so. It's one thing from the other locker room. I talked to Caroline Rice, who's one of our reporters who covered the Michigan locker room. I said, so what did Harbaugh have to say? And she said, well, not much. It was a lot of 3-word answers and, what was that? What the heck was that? What happened to your defense? Why is everything on fire? And it was just kind of, well, we got to get better. We got to work harder. We're going to try. We got to learn from this, make sure this doesn't happen again. And someone asked him, was that not what your mindset was coming out of here in 2016? And he said, yep, it was, which to his credit, they did not lose the same way they did in 2016.
It's true. They found a new way. Yeah, I listened to some of it. And it wasn't like any depressing answers. It was like what he says, nothing cleanses the soul like getting the hell kicked out of you, and that's what it was almost like. It was like a midweek press conference.
Yeah,
and it's like just you got to move on. What else are you supposed to do? You just got seriously exposed and dominated, and you can't be whining about it.
Yeah, Treebuck says he knows his progress, but does miss the roses in the teeth photos from prior Michigan games. Yeah, that definitely does. Definitely something lost with the Big Ten championship game. someone said OSU totally choked Karan Higdon. Higdon was the one who guaranteed Michigan would win. 15 carries, 72 yards, 4.8 yards per carry for him. I mean, that's not completely dominating, but that's like, it's fine. It's warm milk. Like, yep. Susan, can't believe that happened. Yep. Mike asked about Demetrius Knox. No, we did not hear anything. And no one has ever scored so many points versus Michigan in regulation. 41 touchdown passes in the season, 5 touchdown passes versus Michigan. No one has ever seen anything like this. Savor it. That is from Andrew.
And maybe 6 touchdown passes.
Maybe 6 touchdown passes. Yeah, that's the last thing that's sort of be determined whether the one to Paris Campbell was a run or a pass. Paris Campbell said it was a pass, but it was scored a run initially. They were kind of reviewing that, and so that may change. So we're out of questions, and we've gone like 50 minutes on our 20-minute postgame show. So we should hurry up.
Yeah. Are you set?
I cannot possibly talk about this anymore.
Right,
we should write about it.
Yeah, I'm worried that eventually the vacuum cleaner is going to come into this room. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Check out all of the stuff, all of the content over at theozone.net today, tonight, tomorrow, day after that. While you are obviously going to rewatch this game, your DVR is going to get a workout on this one, and there probably won't need to be a lot of fast forwarding. So enjoy. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll see you in Indianapolis the next time we see you.
Yeah, well, the next time you see us, we can't see them. That's not how this works.
All right, Tom. Have a good night, everybody, even though I cannot see you.